There we are. Hello, hello, everybody. So good to see you. Welcome to Heal Profoundly and Enduringly. I'm so happy to have you here. As you know, this is my weekly show where we are bringing forward a lot of different ways to be able to heal at your deepest level possible. And my goal is to really help people be able to access tools in addition to just vibrations and connection and practitioners that they can connect with to heal at their deepest level. So today I have Adrian Hall. Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. Adrian is an intuitive channel and coach for crystal and emotion. She uses over a decade of experience as a licensed therapist. Just like me, we're both therapists moving into the 5D here. In addition to her professionally trained intuitive gifts to support her clients in shifting their emotional processing system from the 3D, which is us here on the planet in human form, to the 5D, right? A different dimension, a higher timeline. Realizing that our emotions can actually be portals to assist us with activating and connecting with this higher dimensional timeline. So this allows her clients to live vibrationally and create multidimensionally. Did I get that right?
You got it all. It's perfect.
Beautiful. So thank you so much for that gorgeous introduction. We're going to be talking about multidimensional living today. And I would love it if you could just let people know what that means for those of us who are watching that have never heard of this term before.
Yeah. Ooh, I just love to talk about these things. So if you ask different people, they're probably going to tell you different things. So I'm just going to tell you my take on it. Yep. So all dimensions and realities exist at once, right? Mm-hmm. The only difference is our perception, right? So we can enter at any dimension of an experience, any octave of an experience, depending on our perception, where we enter it, where our vibrational space is. So living multidimensionally means that we're able to access different octaves of an experience. And why do we want to access a higher dimensional aspect of an experience? Because it's more exciting, it's more fulfilling, it collapses time. It's something where we get closer and closer to living in alignment with our soul's desires, what we're here to do, all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. And you just talked about collapsing time. That's like a big buzzword, a big buzz phrase in the spiritual community. And how I really see that is activating and amplifying our efficiency, right? With our ability to get things done, with bringing things into our life much more quickly. Is there anything else you have to say about that?
Yes. Okay. So we think about time as like minutes and seconds, right? Like, Tuesday comes after Monday, all that stuff. But what's actually happening is time doesn't exist. Time isn't linear. We are the ones who are actually moving vibrationally. So when we are able to tap into the multidimensional nature of reality, that means we're able to move consciously, vibrationally towards what it is that we want to create. Mm-hmm. And we see this magic all the time. We're just not consciously doing it. And so that's why it's so exciting and so fun to play with, waking up our consciousness to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I love that you said play with, because that's exactly, it's so funny too, because just while I was walking my dog just now, that's one of the things that was coming forward was this concept of playing with our healing, playing with our wealth consciousness, playing with our energy, right? Like allow this to be fun. The healing journey doesn't have to be this like, oh, let's dive into the shadows and cry all day, like it gets to be really, really fun. And yes, when we enter those higher timelines, we can feel that palpably for sure. But I love this idea of play too, because it gives us the opportunity to make it our own. Like we can kind of play with it and see what works and kind of try things on for size and be like, oh, that was really fun. I like that. I want to do that again.
Yeah. And I think there's like a little bit of a misnomer when it comes to like higher vibrational or like higher dimensional. And it comes in thinking like, oh, we need to be like happy and shiny and like positive. But you were just kind of alluding to it there when you were talking about the play with the stuff that can feel really dense, that's not actually so dense. Meaning like, I have something coming up that's bringing up a lot of like nervousness, but that's also excitement, right? Like nervousness is excitement without the breath, right? So it's like, ooh, can I put, ooh, something uncomfortable? Oh, okay. Ooh, let me play with that. Let me see what that's all about. So it's not about bypassing that or just being shiny happy all the time. It's literally about being with it fully and being able to play with it.
Yeah. And I think that's what so many people struggle with, right? Is like being present with what they label as negative. It's not negative. And, you know, God, the cosmos, the Akash, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is really viewing everything we experience with a sense of wonder and awe and reverence. Like for us, you know, like, wow, you guys took on this human experience and you're really feeling the extremes or the duality or whatever. And I love the fact that we get to be compassionately present with whatever's coming up, kind of treating that anger or anxiety or upset as if it were our child, if it were our loving pet, and being like, oh my gosh, how are you? What's going on? Getting information rather than just this reactive, shut up, I want to move on with my day.
Yes. Yes. And that piece right there of shutting something down, that's what creates the lower vibrational state. Because a higher vibrational state is about authenticity, right? It's about being open to what is. I'm here for it. Like think about when you were talking about the Akash and like God watching our human experience. I'm thinking about watching an athlete perform that's like a super high level athlete. Like when we see an athlete perform, like they are like blood, sweat, and tears. They're like in the thing. They're probably really uncomfortable in their body. You know, they expanded beyond their limits, and we're there like, wow, you know?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. That's so funny too, because one of my clients, it was so sweet. She just sent me a message this morning on Instagram, just like, you know, thank you for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself, you know? And that's the key, right? Like, that's what the universe does for us. That's what we as light workers do for others. That's what we all do for one another. It's just waking up to that and having that awareness. So my question is, for people who do want to start shifting into this, into their multidimensional nature, into these higher levels of consciousness, where would you suggest they begin?
So that is exactly like you're hitting right on the point that we're talking about. And I have a word for it. And it's not mine, it's everybody knows it. It's really stepping into a space of divine neutrality, right? So like looking at something and being like, interesting, like, oh, okay. And not having anything about it. Like things aren't dualistic. That's a signature of the 3D paradigm, right? So there isn't anything good or bad. You know, it doesn't matter if it's pleasant or unpleasant. It's stepping into this space of divine neutrality to observe it. And when we do that, we're like God in the universe to ourselves, right? We're looking at an experience going, ooh. And the way we can shift there is asking the question, what's the function of this? Like, what is the function of this experience right now? So for example, one of my best friends was talking about something that was happening at work. They're in like a work meeting, and everyone, it looks like her coworkers are trying to take a project away from her, right? So the ego immediately is like, what the F, you know, like no to this, like I'm doing it. I've put in all this work, but the thing is she didn't even want it. She didn't even want to do it. And so she caught it in the moment and being like, this is actually like the ego doesn't like it, but the function of this is perfect, right? Like no one's trying to take away my power. Like this is just what I actually wanted to have happen. It just didn't like look good. Right. So I feel like that's the space where there's the transition into coaching or transition into healing away from therapy. Is with therapy, we have to look at it like you said, having compassion for the experience, knowing the emotions that are coming up. But to a client who's in the middle of like a trauma, you don't go like, okay, what's the function of that experience? Like,
exactly.
That's later after you process it, you know? So when we're in a space of willingness, when we've processed the emotions, getting into that space of divine neutrality and looking at something and be like, no matter how good or bad this looks, what's the function of it? And that's when we start to access the different octaves of an experience.
See, you know what I love so much about this? I love that you're using the word function instead of lesson. That makes me really happy and it gives me chills because it's so funny. It's like, because we talk about finding the lesson in things, right? But it almost feels like to me, and maybe this is something I need to explore, right? But like there's a vibrational pull there that feels like, well, I need to learn a lesson because I've done something wrong in a way.
Yes.
Right. Whereas like function is like, I know this is working for me. And I know consciously, like intellectually, that's what lesson means as well. But vibrationally, that feels different. Like lesson feels like, oh, I need to learn this or else I'm going to get like hit with a stick. You know what I mean? Rather than like, what's the function of this? So that it can assist me with greater functioning. I love that.
Yes. And it's even in things that are what we would call like good, right? So like, let's say that somebody has like, a windfall of money, or, they meet their whatever soulmate person, or like some just wonderful, abundant thing happens to them or for them. When we get swept away and so attached to, oh, this good thing is happening, maybe I've earned it, maybe I deserve it, maybe I've done all this clearing and da. No. Also the function of it. Like, because then we're still in the duality of it. And then what happens if that thing gets taken away? Then we're still attached to it. Like, oh no, something terrible happened. Like we just continuously remove that like good, bad, pleasant, or unpleasant, and continuously go to the space of divine neutrality. We're not here earning anything or deserving anything or being worthy of anything. We're born that way. We're here to experience. And so sometimes it's a little easier to experience. Sometimes it's a little more difficult, right? But if we get so attached to whether something good or bad is happening, then we can get up in resistance about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because when you're talking, I'm thinking too about this meditation I did once that was guided by Colette Baron Reed years ago. And it was this concept that I feel like I have this energetic memory of now, right, of this meditation, because it was this concept of, me being in the space that I'm in and being able to really view myself from God's perspective, right? Like flying all the way, she takes you all the way up into the sky where you're really viewing ourselves almost like we're all these little players in a game, right? And God's the puppeteer, the universe is the puppeteer, right? And so and it's like we're being placed in these different locations, in these different situations in order to create the magic that is necessary, that connects to all the other magic. It's almost like all of our little heads on the earth are connecting to create these beautiful constellations that are constantly moving, right?
Yes.
Which is so freaking cool because, and then like at the end of this meditation, God comes down with his hands right here, says, here, like kind of jump into my hands, let me lift you up, and giving us this grace, giving us this lightness of beings to be able to move through this experience. And I think that being able to connect with that from a heart space is so much easier than from a cognitive space, right?
Yes.
Like really feel into that when we're going through a meditation or visualization. We retain that information and we integrate it into our being at a level that we just can't get to that depth in the cognitive level.
Yes, it's just so true. And that's not what our mind is for. Our mind is not for that, And I think too, like when we get into that heart space of things and we allow life to flow through us, that's a space of like being in love with life. Like no matter what it is, like, okay, fear is here. Like, okay, nervousness is here. Okay. Love and excitement is here. Like, ooh, like, okay, like bring it all. I'm ready for it. I'm open to it. Right. And that's where like when we really embody loving life and being open to all that it has to offer, then we're feeling that like God's hands coming down and like lifting us up, because we know that's always there. That's always happening. It's just opening our perception to it.
Yeah. And trusting that it's happening, like trusting that it's happening and trusting that we're going to be lifted and held and supported and guided, that's a big thing. So can you help us understand this transition for you from the traditional therapy world to this multidimensional living? Because I know that it's probably been a process for you, just like it was for me. And I would love to hear a little bit more about, what brought you to that transition?
So I'll try to give the cliff notes because it's a long story.
All right. Mine's really long too. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like anyone on the spiritual path, you go through an awakening, which is a beautiful story in and of itself, but we won't go there. I just started, once you start to awaken, you start to see things in a certain way you can't unsee. Once your consciousness starts to open up, you can't close it back down, even though there have been plenty of times where I've been like, can we go down? So in my work as a therapist, I also am a trained psychic, which I wasn't trying to do. And, bringing any of that stuff, like that just like happened. It just like came into my world and it was like calling me and I was like, okay, but you can't say that as a therapist, like I'm receiving like intuitive information.
I know.
So, and I certainly like wouldn't tell my clients that I'm a psychic, like, and I don't even like love that word that much, but anyway, so I started realizing how much intuitive information I was getting. And then I would have to stop some of it. Like I would just have to keep on holding it because it wasn't the time for the person to hear it, because they needed to be in a space of, I need to process my feelings. I need to create psychological safety. They were in a different space. So I kept on having this information and being able to see things that I knew could make a whole new world available to the person, but they were not ready to hear it. And not because it's wrong or bad, like therapy is super, super vital, super important. But through this information coming in, I could see that I was being pulled into another space.
Yeah.
And it's not really fair for me to be in this other space. I would try to keep on traveling back to my client as we do, to meet them where they're at, but they're not getting the full benefit of working with me. And there's going to be someone else who's going to be more invested in like creating that psychological safety. Like I would always do it because that's responsible, right? And helping them build that. But I just always knew you're getting like 10% of what I can offer you, and let somebody else who's really, really invested and interested in doing all that stuff, let that person be the one who helps you create that psychological safety. It's necessary and important.
Yeah.
But my energy kept getting pulled, to a different place. So when you invest so much time, energy, and everything and money into a profession, you're like, nah, like, no, I'm not leaving this behind. Like there's no way.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally today is like the beginning of the last week of my last clients, and I love them all. It's a really good example of like opening to it all. Like I feel so much love for my clients. I feel so much love for the work that we have done together. I feel so much excitement about the next step. I feel grief about letting them go. Like it's all of it. And my commitment this week is just like, I'm going to let the whole thing run through me and I'm going to honor every single thing that passes through.
That's so beautiful. And I honor you so deeply for taking this step because yeah, I feel you. I mean, I went through those stages of grief too. And it's so funny because when I went to write my clients the letter to fully terminate my traditional therapy practice, that was in December of 2020. Yeah. And I opened the letter that because I had kind of been running both businesses for like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And then it just started, I started bringing some of the work into my traditional therapy for those who were open.
Yeah.
But, it got to the point where, like you said, every solution that I could come up with or every guidance that I could give was entirely from the spiritual realm. And I just wasn't living authentically in mental health diagnostics and just like the mental health approach anymore. And it wasn't real. And that in that way, I wasn't showing up in my fullest, and my clients deserve that,
Yes.
I remember it was funny because when I wrote my letter, I realized that I had started it in February of 2020. And I was like, okay, now I know how long my grief process was. Like it took me some time to not only separate that egoic piece, which was like, I have a wildly successful therapy practice. Like I have had a waiting list for 5 to 7 years. Like people are knocking down the doors to meet with me. And I've helped so many people. And how dare I walk away from that when all of these people are in need? So
Right.
for me, that's where some of the guilt was, because I was just like, but I'm so good at this and I've helped so many people and there's so many more people that desire and need it. But it's so funny because now when I work in the records, I can get to those core wounds like in seconds. And those people who are coming to this are in a greater space of psychological safety, as you said, and able to open to that and able to receive that. And the level of efficiency and being able to heal literally just has skyrocketed. Clients of mine who did transition over to this work, who had been stuck for decades, no matter what avenues we took or what programs they went to, and it's brilliant to be able to see that, but it's also so affirming, of this work. And that when you follow that alignment and where you're drawn, it helps not only you, but everybody else around you. So that was my long response to that.
Yes.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful story. And I think it is like that part of feeling the responsibility is huge. Like it's embedded in our training and probably why we even came into the therapy profession to begin with. Like I take it super seriously. And I think all therapists do. And then the funny part is like, when you start to get into more alignment, then people, it doesn't matter what it is, like people will start to draw towards you. Like people are coming out of the woodwork from like referral sources from years ago, like saying, oh, so when are you coming back from your hiatus? Like, and I'm like, no, I'm not taking new clients. And they're like, okay, but when you're back from your hiatus, can you? And I'm like, no, let me be clear. I'm not coming back.
I have fully been sucked into a portal. I'm gone.
It's over.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's actually one question I wanted to ask you, because you were talking about like using the emotions as cues and portals to shift us. Can you just share a little bit about that? I mean, I know you talked a little bit about, turning towards it and not looking at it as duality, but I would just love to know if you have anything else to say about that.
Yes, you actually gave a perfect example.
Oh, good.
And I caught it, but I forgot to say it. So thank you for this. You were saying the guilt that you felt, right, between like February to December and, continued in your process. The 5D version of guilt is integration. So in the 3D world, guilt is meant to keep us inside the bounds of our ethics and morals, right? So if you do something that's wrong, you feel guilty, and then you come back into the space where you're doing right things. In the 5D version of it, what's happening is you're expanding, right? So you are expanding into really embodying the gifts that you have to offer to the people you work with. And so you're in this space of expansion, and the guilt comes up, and that's a portal into integrating. Like when the guilt comes up, that's actually a good sign. Like, oh, you're about to integrate a bigger part of who you are. So in that guilt, like, of course, guilt is different if you're like, you committed a crime or something, like a legit crime. But if it's like you're in a space of expansion, then that's a portal toward being able to integrate more of who you are.
I love that. That's such a beautiful way of describing it. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, yeah, guilt is only warranted when you've intentionally done something to harm another, which is very rare, right? It's one of the most habitual emotions that we feel. And it's truly an invitation is what it is. And it's also so funny that you align that with the integration piece, because that was the hardest part for me. I had sepsis 5 years ago. That's what kind of started my spiritual awakening. And so, at that time, it was very hard for me to integrate, because I would start to feel better. And then I started doing some energy work and some spiritual work. And then I'd get all excited and be like, oh my gosh, this is working and it feels so good and blah, blah, blah. And then I would just do too much and fall on my face again and be sick for 3 weeks, And so for me, it was about learning how to integrate with a greater level of ease and to offer myself time, space, and patience to have a container to be able to do that. And of course, my body was the symbolic container that was offering me this opportunity to do this, right?
Yes.
Which was beautiful and one of the biggest lessons on my journey. So I really, really love that you brought those two together. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And when we know, like, oh, guilt is coming up, like, woo, this is an opportunity. Like, oh, I'm integrating. This is the right thing. I'm integrating more of who I am. All of a sudden, you're at a different octave of that experience. So let's say it's you and you're like, sitting down to write this letter and you're feeling all this guilt coming up. You're like, okay, yes, this is for me. So you're able to move through writing that letter from a different space of loving and honoring everything that's gone on with your clients, loving and honoring your journey, and being able to move forward. It's not stopping you. It's actually momentum forward because you're entering that emotional space in a different way.
Yeah, I love that so much. And like one of my clients who's actually in my Akashic Records certification program, she's also a therapist. And she did work with a healer of hers that assisted her with really honoring and appreciating every single client and being able to, move forward and process the grief around each person in her practice, which I thought was really beautiful. I thought that was a really, really beautiful approach, rather than just like, okay, I'm honoring my practice, I'm honoring the work I've done, I'm honoring my clients as a whole. Really being able to focus on those individual relationships and like connecting to your heart space and really feeling into the shifts for them, the shifts for you, the shifts in the space in between,
Yeah.
That's really, really beautiful. And I was actually talking to one of my clients last week who had a really bad panic attack. And it became very clear through the Akash that this was not just a panic attack, a run of the mill panic attack. I don't believe it ever is. But with this particular situation, it was truly a portal, if you will, to use your terminology, into her next level, and we were able to say, this is actually expansion. Like your system is actually expanding. Your nervous system is readjusting right now. And with that readjustment, you're going to be discharging old energy. You're going to be removing old things and kind of stretching your field to a space where you're receiving more, where you're opening more. So that's a beautiful thing, but just allow, don't get so caught up in, here we go again. Here's another panic attack,
Right. And you can see like in the understanding that came through the Akash for her, like when a panic attack comes up, or even for the people listening now, if they have panic attacks, when that comes up, you are in a different space with that experience because you understand what's going on. You're at a different level of perception.
Yeah. And that's every single time, like anxiety or guilt or anything comes up to my field, my first response now is, oh, thank you so much. You know what? This is a huge compliment because it shows me that I'm ready for the next level. Thank you, universe, for like seeing my potential, for seeing my possibility to expand. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where the divine neutrality, coming back to what we were talking about before, that's where the divine neutrality really comes in. It's never bad news. We're just conditioned that way because we live in the 3D world, because we have lived through the old paradigm and we're feeling into the new paradigm. When we have that divine neutrality of being able to see something in a different way, we're really living multidimensionally. And when I know you want to say something, I just want to say this one part. When we do that, because emotions are frequencies, they're a vibrational state, right? And if we're moving vibrationally, you see how that works, right? So when we're moving into a different space, Siri's coming up on my computer. When we're moving, she's saying, what can I help you with? When we're moving into a different vibrational space versus like the panic attack, like, oh no, here it goes. Like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. That's a very clear frequency. When we're moving into, ooh, this is expansion. Like, okay, I'm going to be with my body. I'm going to let it run through me so that I can expand. That's a whole different thing. And then like energy attracts like energy, right? So we're moving into a space where that expansion becomes more available to us. We're like, oh, I see where that is. Things come into our field that open our eyes to it because we understand it's there.
Yeah, I love that so much. Well, and I love that you just used the word open, because that's the one thing that you said too, that you feel is, the primary thing to be focusing on to heal the most profoundly and enduringly. So can you share a little bit about that concept for you?
Yeah. And I think like we've been weaving it in this whole time, which is, which is basically like things, what occurs in our life, like what you were talking about with that meditation of seeing all the little heads and like all the little things that, on the planet, and like seeing all the beautiful things that are happening to make the magic happen. staying open to that, staying open to the magic that's going to happen. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it seems pleasant or unpleasant. Can we have the courage to stay open no matter what it is? Because it's always, 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 always here for us. We might not understand it.
Yeah. And that's why we need the safety, like you were talking about, because people are not going to feel comfortable expanding into that openness or that chasm that they may see the universe as, right? Without feeling safe, without feeling safely grounded within themselves or on the planet, you know? And what I love that you were talking about before was feeling into the multidimensionality. Because, you know, I've been talking about that a lot lately with the concept of self-care, because, you know, so many people get involved in checking the things off their list and doing all of the lovely things for themselves. And there is a place for that, just like there's a place for therapy, but it's one layer, right? It's one layer.
Right.
And so being able to really feel into, like, take that extra few moments to really sink into the palpable experience of whatever it is you're doing for self-care, you know, is going to get you to a level of depth that's going to heighten your openness and your ability to connect to these other dimensions that are available to you.
Yeah. And they're literally everywhere. Like, it's here now. Like, I think of them as like Russian nesting dolls. So like the center doll, that's like the solid one, that's like our human body, right?
Yeah.
And then the dimensions go out like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, like, we only perceive something crazy, like 11 bits of information per second, when we could perceive like billions of bits. I mean, there's billions of bits of information possible to perceive. So if we embrace our sensitivity, become more perceptive, then we're perceiving more, you know, multiple dimensions.
Exactly, which is exactly why we're doing what we're doing and being called to doing what we're doing, because the more that people are aware of that and can learn the tools to be able to tap in, you know, not only the better our planet's going to be, but the happier everyone is going to feel, you know, because we have this ability to tap into, honestly, more and more and more information, the more people that learn about this, because this energy interacts with our unique energetic blueprint differently for each person. We're each expressing it differently. We're each tapping into a different corner of the Akash, of the universe, of the multidimensional energy of consciousness. And so when we get to connect with more and more people that have this knowledge, the more we learn about what's available to us, because it's truly infinite. And that's why it's so exciting to bring more and more people into this realm, to be able to say, oh my gosh, yay, we're going to get even more nuggets of wisdom and understand ourselves even more intimately.
Yes. Yes. It's
so
fun.
Are there any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience before we close up?
I really feel like we got it all.
I know we did kind of cover a lot. I've gotten so many chills during this conversation too. Like, it's so beautifully aligned. I love it. Let me just check in and see. We got lots of people here hanging out with us. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. You're still helping so many. Yeah. And Robin, she's one of my graduates from the certification program. She's saying, like, I relate this to where I decided not to go into a clinical counseling setting. Yeah. And it's funny because, like, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist from the time that I was 12. Like, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. Really? You too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always knew it. And I also know that I was meant to be on that path for my own learning, for my own wounds, for my own, and to help a lot of people. Yes, of course. You know, I was still of service. So I was still of service, but I think being able to be educated about the clear distinction between the place that holds in our world and the possibility of other things, you know, being able to see the difference between the two and educate on how much more intimately we can know ourselves.
Yeah, it's huge. That foundation of understanding what it takes to have the psychological safety is such a huge place, a great foundation to build off of when you're leading other people into those more expanded places.
Right. And also cultivating that concept of trust, just like you and I were talking about, right? Like, when they trust us. Like a lot of my clients have started doing some of this work too, just because, you know, I've known them for a decade or more, you know, and they're saying like, I trust you and I trust your journey and I've seen your journey, I've witnessed it. And that's the beautiful piece too, is to be able to just be models, right, as we're living, and have people witness it and be able to see the transformation as it unfolds.
Yeah. And that's another piece about like the therapy work. Like we, as therapists, are not really able to show, be that model so much, you know, because it's not about us in the session, of course, but in this way, moving into this space, we can be more seen to be a model for it. And I don't know, do you know your human design?
Of course I do. I love my human design. I'm a 4/6 emotional generator. What are you?
Yes, I'm a 4/6 emotional projector.
Oh my gosh, we're best friends. Look at that match. That's perfect.
It's so important because of the 6 in our profile. We have to be able to be seen. This is being a way shower. You have to be able to be seen as a model so that other people can calibrate to that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so funny. It's like, we need to focus on our network, right? Our network that we're connected to. And that's just so natural for me, you know, to create greater and greater intimacy with the people who I'm closest to, rather than like extending my network every day by hundreds and thousands of people, you know, like I want to get to know people. I want to be connected to people again, because the more we do that, the more we all learn about ourselves and about what we have access to. So anyway, I feel like we talk all freaking day. So
yes.
Thank you everybody for being here with us. I really appreciate it. Definitely join me live here on Thursday. I'm going to be going live with Sherry Elise to talk about stepping into your joy at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So join me for that. Thank you, Adrian, so much for being here today. I'm so grateful. And we will
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. We'll see you guys so soon. Bye.